In the dead of night on March 16th, 2006, 53-year-old Terry Fredericks of Overland Park, Kansas, was in the sleeper berth of a yellow transportation 18-wheeler driven by his co-driver, Dennis Bottorff, along a dark stretch of U.S. Highway 54 in New Mexico. As the yellow truck passed a rest area, a swift truck driven by Robin Getchell was attempting to enter the rest area from the wrong entrance and back directly into the highway and into the yellow truck. The collision left Terry Fredericks partially paralyzed and killed his co-driver, Dennis Bottorff, instantly. The only eyewitnesses to the accident was the driver of the swift truck, Robin Getchell. Consistent with her account to the New Mexico State Police, the accident report indicated she was turning into the rest area when the yellow truck rear-ended her. Friends of Terry Fredericks and the co-driver from Yellow Transportation told the Fredericks family that the swift driver's story didn't make sense, given the fact that Terry Fredericks and his co-driver's experience and familiarity with the route they were driving. Subsequent evidence would prove the friends absolutely correct. The damaged swift trailer and yellow cab established that the angle of the swift trailer at the time of impact could not have resulted from a normal steering maneuver. Instead, the damage showed that the swift truck, upon not being able to complete the turn into the rest area, was backing up into oncoming traffic just prior to the accident. Also, subsequent evidence showed that the negligent driver, Robin Getchell, had lied on her job application about past drug use, felony convictions, and license suspensions. She had tested positive for methamphetamine in a U.S. Department of Transportation test conducted shortly after the March 2006 accident. Her employer, Swift, tried unsuccessfully to avoid liability for their driver, claiming that if its driver was impaired by meth at the time of the accident, she would not be in the scope and course of her employment, and therefore Swift could not be vicariously liable for its driver's negligence. The jury quickly dispensed with Swift's unconscionable legal nonsense and returned a verdict of $19.5 million for Terry and $4 million for his wife, Donna. Today, the Insider Exclusive presents the true story and the miraculous courage of Terry and Donna Fredericks, and how Scott Nutter, partner at the law firm of Schamberg, Johnson, and Bergman, got justice for Terry and Donna, earning the highest respect from citizens and lawyers alike as one of the best plaintiff trial lawyers in Missouri and in the nation. Hi, I'm Steve Murphy, and this is the Insider Exclusive, live from Kansas City, Missouri at the law firm of Schamberg, Johnson, and Bergman. It's my great privilege to introduce to the show Scott Nutter. Welcome to the show, Scott.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about your firm and why you decided to be a trial lawyer for the people.
I work at Schamberg, Johnson, and Bergman. It's a firm that's been around since 1949, and I'm very lucky to be here and work with Lynn Johnson and Vic Bergman, the senior members of our firm, who have been successful in this area for a very, very long time. And I've had the privilege of working with a lot of great people on a lot of great cases. I decided to be a trial lawyer or a plaintiff's lawyer because that's really who I am and who I've always been. My mom used to work for a disability center when I was a kid growing up, and I used to go to work with her and learned at a very young age the value and the privilege and the pleasure of working and helping those less fortunate. So it's really who I am, helping people who are in need.
You represented Terry and Donna Fredericks in a case which I understand was the largest personal injury verdict in the state of Kansas, $23.5 million. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Give us an overview of that case. What happened?
I'd say it's the most interesting and challenging case that I've ever worked on. I remember clearly to this day getting a call from an attorney up in St. Joseph, Missouri, who got a visit from Lydia Bottorff, whose husband, Dennis, had been tragically killed in a trucking accident near Tucumcari, New Mexico. He faxed me the police report. I looked at the police report. The police report said that Mr. Bottorff rear-ended a swift tractor trailer.
These are 18-wheelers,
These
big
are
trucks.
18-wheelers, a Swift over-the-road trailer, and Dennis Bottorff was driving a tractor trailer also for Yellow Roadway Corporation, which is a local company. So I looked at the police report, and I called the lawyer back, and I said, you know, this is a tragedy, but I don't see what there is here that we're going to be able to assist Mrs. Bottorff and her family on, because the police evidently think that he fell asleep at the wheel or something similar and rear-ended this other truck. And he said, you need to come meet these people. So I did, along with my partner, Lynn Johnson. They told me about Dennis's background and his experience, that he'd been a safe and good truck driver for over 30 years, had never had an accident, and that none of this made sense. He'd been driving this same route for years and years and years, never had any health problems, any problems with drowsiness. So we thought that we should take a real close look and investigate. So we were fortunate to be contacted about the case within a week or two of the accident. We dispatched an accident reconstruction team, an engineer, and myself went out there. There were still marks on the roadway. The equipment, the tractor and the trailer, were at a local tow lot. They hadn't been salvaged yet. And from the evidence that was on the road and on the equipment, we were able to place the exact location of the Swift trailer at the point of impact, the location of the yellow tractor at the point of impact. And from there, the case really came together and flowed. And ultimately, through testing that we did, we determined that the Swift tractor trailer was pulling into a rest area, in essence making a U-turn, got stuck, and backed into the yellow tractor, and that's what caused the accident. And you think to yourself, how could that happen? And that was the question that we had, and that ended up being the focus of the case when we filed it. And what we learned was a number of things. We learned, first of all, that the driver of the Swift truck tested positive for methamphetamine. Mm-hmm. We learned that the driver of the Swift truck had zero experience. She'd been driving at Swift for about 3 months, had no experience before that. She had a history of drug and alcohol abuse. She had a criminal history. She had taken and failed the CDL exam 7 times. Mm-hmm. They were running late, she and her husband were, on this particular trip. It was their first cross-country trip. They were being pushed by Swift to hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. The training that she received at Swift was zero. So once we got into the case, it all started to make sense, and it all started to come together why this tragic set of circumstances.
Right, we're going to show some of the depositions that you took of the driver and various other things to actually show how she was actually lying. But before we do that, let's talk about Terry, and let's talk about Donna. Tell us a little bit about who are your clients?
Terry Frederick is as good a client and his wife as we've ever had, and I think that came across in the trial. Terry's just a salt of the earth, Midwestern, Western Kansas guy, and Donna the same. They grew up modestly, always been hard workers, never asked for anything, never been involved in anything like this before, didn't want to file a lawsuit, but felt like they needed to make a difference, to raise some awareness. Yeah. About problems in the trucking industry. Mm-hmm. And then also Terry has significant medical needs and concerns for the future that they wanted to account for. But just great, good, honest, hardworking, salt-of-the-earth Midwesterners.
Tell us a little bit about his injuries.
Terry suffered, his big injury was a spinal cord injury, which caused not complete loss, but partial loss of use of his arms and legs. And he has to use a wheelchair to get around. He can take 10 to 20 steps on his own with use of a walker, but that's about it.
Right. In trying to prove your case, I want to talk a little bit about some of the challenges you faced. The biggest challenge was there was only one eyewitness to this accident, and that eyewitness happened to be the driver, Robin Getchell, of the Swift transportation truck, who ended up lying anyway. But how did you go about disproving her?
The key to disproving her was the accident reconstruction that we were able to do. The good fortune that we were contacted early on in the case while the evidence was still fresh. But one of the things that we did is we decided to do some testing using a tractor and a trailer, just like the ones involved in this case. We rented out a big parking lot at an athletic facility in San Antonio, and we actually ran a number of turn tests to compare the position of the end of a trailer, like the Swift trailer, at various points during this turning maneuver.
Right.
We actually were able to, in my mind, scientifically prove that the only way you could put the Swift trailer where it was located and at the angle it was at the point of impact was through backing up. There was no way that you could do it on a normal turn. Just couldn't happen. So the physical evidence carried the day, and putting the physical evidence together was a lot like CSI. I mean, it was that interesting and that fascinating, because every little mark, every little scratch made a difference in the case in placing the vehicles where they were at the point of impact.
You deposed Robin Getchell, didn't you? We're going to go to a segment of that deposition where she is confronted with the fact that she tested positive for methamphetamine.
Is it your sworn testimony under oath right now that you didn't take methamphetamines before this collision occurred?
Yes, it is.
Let me hand you exhibit number 34. Does your name appear on the front page of exhibit 34?
Yes, it does.
Is it dated March 16th, 2006?
Yes, it is.
Is that the same day this collision occurred?
Yes, it is.
Is this the same day you gave a drug and alcohol test?
Yes, it is.
Again, this document indicates the test was positive, correct?
Yes, it is.
Let's go to the last page of the exhibit, please. And according to the document, test results were positive for methamphetamine, correct?
Correct. Amphetamines.
Well, it doesn't say amphetamines, it says methamphetamine.
Because of her documented use of methamphetamines, the corporation, Swift Transportation, tried to get out of being held responsible at all. Tell us a little bit about that.
They did. It was interesting because on the one hand, they said even if she did take methamphetamine, she wasn't high at the time, and therefore it didn't have anything to do with the accident. And on the other hand...
That's one approach.
That's one approach. On the other hand, they said that if she was high on methamphetamines, then she wasn't our employee, because we have a policy against drug use, and as soon as one of our employees takes drugs, we're not responsible for them.
Now, can corporations escape liability based on what you just said?
No.
If they're employed by the corporation, no matter what they do, that corporation is held responsible, right?
Basically,
because they
yes.
hired them.
Right.
If they had fired them and they did something later on, then it's not in the scope of their employment, right?
That's
How
correct.
does a corporate lawyer say to you or try to present to a jury that they're not responsible if this person is misbehaving or doing something criminal? How do they have the audacity to say that?
Well, what they do is they went to great lengths in this case to show paper to the jury. Paper after paper after paper after paper.
What paper? Policy paper?
Policies and procedures
Right.
that say, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that.
But they're still hired. They're still an employee.
They are, but you signed this document saying that you wouldn't take drugs.
Yeah.
And that if you did take drugs, that we're not responsible for you.
Oh, they have such a document.
They have such documents, but they're not worth the paper they're written on, and the
Oh,
jury
that's good to
certainly
know.
didn't think so.
That's good to know, but they were trying to hide behind them, right?
Right.
We are fortunate enough today to have with us Terry and Donna Fredericks, and we're going to bring them on right now. It is my great privilege and pleasure to introduce Terry and Donna Fredericks. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take us back to that night. You were sleeping in the
Yes.
truck. What do you remember?
I remember waking up with my arms underneath my stomach and my head laying in glass, and calling for my partner and him not answering, and then wondering what happened. And I finally figured out we must have been in an accident or something. Then remembering hearing a voice coming up there and asking if anybody was alive or and anything. Then I presume he's the one that called 911 and got the ambulance there. But just the part of not being able to feel my legs, and
You knew right away you couldn't move, right?
right.
You had been driving for, 15 or 16 years?
Yes,
Never had an accident?
never had an accident.
When did you find out kind of what had really happened, and what happened to your partner?
Well, the gal that come up there in the ambulance, she worked in a restaurant that me and Dennis ate breakfast and stuff in, so I recognized her voice. And she come in there and found out that it was me, laying there and stuff, and I asked her, and she finally told me that he was killed in an accident.
Yeah.
Come through, and I kind of figured he was when he wouldn't answer or whatever, and she's the one that told me that he was killed, and kind of told me what happened,
How long has the recovery period been for you? The accident took place when?
March 16th of 06.
Okay, so it's been 4 years, a little over 4 years. How long were you in the hospital?
6 days down in Amarillo, and then they flew me up to Overland Park Regional, and that's where I had my surgeries done, and I think I was in there, 2 weeks the first time?
Yeah, 2.5 weeks in intensive care.
And then they took me to Mid-America Rehab, and the first night I was in there, I had blood clots pass through my heart and ended up in my lungs, so they took me right back again to get them out. So it's been a rough ordeal.
What were your thoughts during this whole time, Donna?
I didn't know what to think. I mean, I'd completely lost control of my life as I knew it. I was relying on everybody else.
Yeah. How has Terry's disabilities and what has happened to him, how has that changed your life? What are some of the challenges that you face as a couple now?
I mean, we're not a couple. I'm his caregiver, and the injuries have completely emasculated him. I mean, we can't do anything that we did before. I mean, he can walk, maybe 15, 20 feet with a walker. So, I mean, as far as being able to go boating, motorcycle riding, which we enjoy, dancing, I mean, our life isn't the same, and it never will be. No matter how much money we were awarded, it will never, ever be enough, and I'd give them all, every penny back. If we could go back to March 16th at midnight.
Yes.
It's
true.
not, it'll never be enough money. There's nothing that anybody can do that can change it.
Well, what I like about this case the most, and I agree with you 100%, is the fact that this law firm held Swift Transportation responsible for everything that they, the driver, which they tried to get out of,
Right.
And they made them pay, and that's the bottom line.
They
Of
needed
course,
to set an example.
Yeah, of course, money never makes up for, your current condition, but the bottom line is it's at least they sent a message.
And that's exactly what they were trying to tell us they wanted to do.
Yeah.
And fortunately, I guess, between them and ourselves, we were just stubborn enough to push it right to the end.
Good. Well, thank you. We wish you the best.
Thank you.
We wish you the best under the present circumstances, and thank you for giving your time to be on the show. Scott, Terry and Donna are wonderful clients. You did a great job for them.
Oh, thank you.
When you handle cases, how do you know whether you're going to take it to trial or whether you're going to settle it?
A lot of that depends on the defendant, the person who you're trying to hold accountable. And in this case, Swift stubbornly insisted for 2 years that it did nothing wrong and denied responsibility and denied accountability. So Terry and Donna were determined to take the case to trial, as were we, to hold them responsible and to get out into the public and make people aware that there are companies like Swift out there, and people need to know about it, and things need to change.
Yeah.
Because I learned things in this case that to this day, when I'm driving down the highway and I see a tractor trailer, I get nervous. Now there are a lot of good truck drivers out there. Don't get me wrong, but there are companies like Swift out there too who literally would hire anybody.
For people who have unfortunately experienced a catastrophic accident like this, the medical bills are piling up. I hear you talking about for 2 years, Swift denied any responsibility. Had to be in court 2-3 years, right?
Right.
What happens to those medical bills during those 2 to 3 years?
Well, that's a tough question to answer because a lot of times they don't get paid. And
Yeah.
what we try to do is we try to work with doctors and hospitals and let them know there's a lawsuit pending.
Right.
And it's our hope that the lawsuit will be successful, and it's our hope that there will be some resources to help pay those bills. In Terry's case, he was fortunate in the sense that he was on the job and he had workers' compensation coverage.
Yes.
So workers' compensation did cover the medical bills that he incurred, and that took a lot of financial stresses off him.
You brought up the point that, when you drive down the road, you stay away from tractor trailers, 18-wheelers, because you never know who's in the cab. We do the same thing too. I see I looked at the statistics, there's about 5,000 accidents a year. And you have a case like this with a large verdict, $23 million, $23.5 million. Does that send a message to the trucking companies to control their drivers, to monitor them better, so that the industry's safer? Because I don't see the number of accidents declining.
We sure hope it does, but at the same time, all companies want to make a profit, and
Yeah.
unfortunately some companies don't make safety a priority as compared to profits. So we think it makes a difference, and we really believe that as a firm. That's one of the reasons that we do what we do. We believe if you raise public awareness to the problems in the trucking industry and in other areas also, that it's going to prompt change, and if it saves one person or prevents one accident
Yeah.
like what happened to Donna or Terry, it's worth it.
Well, congratulations on the case, and thanks for sharing your time with us today. Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.